DBSCG things.
What's up, Yuhp gang? It's Boy Texan, and welcome back to Yuhp DBSCG Things. And today we're bringing another very exciting deck profile, guys. It's going to be the deck that took first at our last locals. This is Green Cooler. But before we get into it, guys, I do want to say if you guys want any custom mats and or sleeves, absolutely check out Promats, guys. This is the best place for you guys to go get your custom card needs. Links in the description below. And also, before we dive in, guys, I do want to say that I'm trying to grow my Discord community as much as possible. So if you guys are in search for a community where you can come check out some card reveals, ask for an untapped battle and or webcam battle, ask some card questions and or discuss the deck that you're building, this is the place for you. I will leave a link in the description below for you guys to go check it out. And with that being said, guys, if you guys enjoyed this deck or my content in general, remember to hit all those buttons for me, like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And with that being said, let's spin it around and dive in. Alrighty, you guys, and here we are with this week's local winner playing his Green Cooler deck. Go ahead and tell us about your deck today and your matchups.
Again. So by now, I'm sure most people are familiar with what he does. This deck is probably the best green deck out there at the moment. When he swings, you can add a life or play a unison, specify cost of 1. And then once per turn, if a unison is sent to your drop area, once per turn, not during your turn I want to add, which is actually pretty cool. You get to draw 1 card, so that actually somewhat replaces the fact that you have to give up your draw in order to play the unison, which is really cool. And then standard awaken, 4 or less, he self-awakens, which is cool. And then it's untap draw, so pretty cool. Other side changes a little bit. He's still got the skill where he can either draw or play unison. Doesn't take life on this side. Still has a skill where he draws a card once per turn if a unison is placed in your drop area. And then his activate battle, not once per turn. You can discard a unison to give either himself or another green unison you control plus 5k, which is really clutch for defense and finishing. Yep.
Dark Broly-esque style effect there. Very, very strong.
Yeah, too bad Joe Q didn't get that because it desperately needs it. Anyway.
Definitely desperately needs that. Alright, go ahead and go and tell us about your main deck here.
Main deck is fairly standard. I chose the hand control variant, a little more so. Got 4 of the standard search cooler. Play him. He searches top 5 for a unison, specify cost of 3 or less. Really, really cool. Another really neat thing about him is if a unison sent to your drop area, you can choose to take 1 life, add it to your hand, and then he gets plus 11 for the turn. So he is pressure, so he is really good. So he is typically your early game plays. If you don't see a unison you want to play turn 1, this is usually your go-to. Or if your first mulligan hand's kind of crap, this is where you start.
Very important to note that obviously the life rip is optional and you get the plus 11 regardless.
Yes, that is also very important.
So no matter what, if you life rip or not, he's always going to be a 15k if you cycle a unison out.
Yep. So that is really nice. Very good against your control matchups if they're trying to stall your awaken. Easily take up to 2 or 3 life per turn.
He's my favorite card to use energy for when it goes to my awakening turn. Because if you have 2 life, or even 1, just dropping him, getting your search out for that 1 energy, and then just free playing off the leader and awakening.
Especially if you have multiple of them out. Like if you have multiple of them out, you can literally take 3 life in 1 turn. You can literally just go ham. First counterplay, pretty standard. Spoiler alert, this is a unison deck. Shocker. So of course, I max this guy out. You cycle through cards pretty quickly, but I still like having the option of having it out there. So just to make sure you have ways of dealing with their battle cards, because at the end of the day, this deck does target the hand a little bit more early game than it does the field until you get to your turn 3, turn 4 when you can play your Frieza unison. So not much to say here. Pretty standard card.
Very powerful card. Of course, any deck that's going to get a unison out on turn 1, turning their counterplays live is very strong. So of course you want to max that out.
Especially when this deck is so empower heavy, so you're always going to have that card live. So it's just good to have. Fun card, 4-drop cooler. His permanent basically says you can only play 1 per turn, and then double strike, and then he gets reduced energy cost by each unison. Excuse me. By each unison in your drop area, so obviously he can go all the way down to 1, which is really good. Play him, bind up 1 unison. Your opponent discards a card, so he is also really nice. Mid-game pressure, late game he can really come and clutch too, especially if your opponent's hand is down, you've been hand controlling them properly, so that really helps. That 1 energy, double strike, discard a card, all really good stuff.
Very powerful. Goes along with the theme of the deck being a lot of your discard plays are going to be 1 energy plays or even free off your leader. So that's very powerful.
And the fact that you can play unison for free once per turn and not have to use your energy, having him is just insane. So love the card.
Pure value. Cycles your unisons back to back so you can search them out later if you need to, things like that. There's a lot of uses for it.
So this card, I am honestly probably going to pull out in favor of the Bupo, the green Boo that does kind of the same thing. Mainly because the other card forces your opponent to discard 2 cards. This one only makes your opponent discard 1. He's still kind of neat though. He's a counterattack. His energy cost gets reduced for each unison in your drop area 2. Minimum is 2 energy, which is nice. The only upside for him versus Bupo is he doesn't make you discard a card. But if I'm being honest, I think I'd rather have the Bupo only because...
That's the difference between that and Bupo. They both cost 2. They're both able to hit with a lot of counter plays. They both negate the attack and then play. The only difference is without taxing you 1 card in hand, he's going to tax your opponent 1 card per attack. Bupo, on the other hand, is going to tax you 1 card in hand to tax your opponent 2 cards every attack. So that's the only difference there.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I like the other one better because most people, if they have a heavier hand, if I can't hand control them properly, they don't mind swinging through this as much. So especially on a turn where I think they're going to go for game, they're not nearly as afraid of this. So I think I'm going to switch him out for the Bupo. But not a bad card, just there's just one better, unfortunately. Moving over to super combos, a bit of an odd choice, but it's fun. The Vegeta super combo, set 10 I do believe. This card's really fun because if you play it, your opponent discards a card, and then standard super combo play, if your life's at 4 or less, and all your energy is green, which of course it is, this is a mono green deck, you can draw a card. So I like him better only because of the versatility. If your opponent's down to like 3 or 4 cards in hand and you're getting ready for the kill, if you have 1 or 2 of these in hand, just play it out.
Do so much justice for you, bro. There's not been a time where I've seen this card come out and just been like, oh, that was a bad play. No, every single time you play this card, it's very, very powerful. Not only is it going to be a super combo if your opponent doesn't get rid of it, but it's making your opponent discard 1, and then if you combo it off within the next attack, or maybe even defensively, of course you get the draw still as well, because it doesn't specify a combo from hand.
It does not.
So that is a very powerful card right there.
Yep, I love it. Pretty much any hand control deck that I ever work with, if I know I'm going to go down to 4 or less, this is the card I choose.
Absolutely.
I think this is the...
Yeah, especially with, that's another great thing to point out. With the speed awakening that this deck does, especially tagged along with that 1-drop cooler like you were saying, that card turns itself live very quickly.
Very quickly. So 2 Homicidal Clones, not much to say here. You take your life very, very quickly, but if you go down to 5 life and then you want to awaken and then have your awakening turn the following turn, it's good to have. Not much to say. Every color has one of these negates. It's good. It's clutch. Comes in handy.
Stops 2 attacks. Whether you're at 5 trying to get yourself to 4 or not, this card stops 2 attack. It's always worth life, and if not, you got 2 energy for it. It's also worth that too. So very strong. Very strong.
Not to mention it goes super, super well with Dormant. Like let's say turn 3, you tap yourself out, and then you're just like, all right, I'm at 5 life. I'm going to Dormant for free, and then you're going to play this for free. So then you pretty much literally stop your opponent's turn. So that's clutch. Speaking of Dormant, again, not much to say. I run it at 4 just because...
You kind of have to. With how early and how easily this card is live, you kind of have to.
Not only that, but one thing I've noticed is while you're hand controlling your opponent, you do kind of hand control yourself a little bit. While this deck is pretty good at plussing thanks to the leader skill, because as I mentioned before, it's both the front side and the back side, where if you play Unison during either turn, you get the draw. So I mean, if you're cycling Unisons on your opponent's turn, you can kind of get your hand back up and running, but if your opponent is playing heavy aggro, you're almost done. So it has to be there.
Absolutely, and that's actually really important to point out. The fact that this deck does have some defensive style skills on their Unisons, you can play Unisons on your opponent's turn way more often than you would think you would.
So we'll go into the Unisons that you do play on your opponent's turn. Of course, I have these maxed out. I play the Celza, and then I play the Nays. So really, really good cards, very, very clutch to the leader itself. So the Celza is effectively another Frieza Unison counterplay. So when he plays, you get the Empower Green, he comes out with 3 or more markers, he will KO a battle card, so energy cost 7 or less, so that's really, really cool. The Celza is really, really nice for a couple of reasons. One, he's a counterattack. Play him, he negates the attack. If he comes in with 3 or more markers, which I'm going to say now, that's not hard to do. The majority of the cards in this deck have Empower. So having that high marker count is not going to be a problem, especially if you're running the Democrat Unison, which of course I do. He comes out negates the attack, and then you choose one of your opponent's battle cards, and it can't attack until the end of your next turn. So really clutch against decks like U7 with all those dual attackers. It really saves your ass.
Clutch in a lot of things, dude.
It really does.
It does so much work.
My personal favorite thing about this card is he's an excellent turn 1 play, because if you play him turn 1 and you are going second and you have the opportunity to swing with your leader and take advantage of his free play skill, he's a +2 unison. So you play him for 1 energy, he upticks to 2 or upticks to 3 total. So he makes all of your other power cards like your freezing unisons live. So that is super clutch. So even if you don't find his counterattack skill useful, the fact that he's able to +3 on your turn 1 going second and make your whole Empower chain live, that's huge.
Absolutely, and of course, if you're going second, like you were saying, him on your turn 1, going second, your turn 1 is actually amazing. You play him, uptick him to 2, swing, he becomes a 10k, so that's a potential damage. You can swing with your leader, rip yourself to life, play yourself a whole new unison, get yourself a draw, and of course that's a damage there, and then your next new unison.
In my final matchup, of course, I do that. And then, of course, the unison that goes in very well tangent, my most ideal turn 1 play if I'm going second, would be the Frieza Dynasty Unison. Forgive the split, I only have 2 SBRs at the moment. Very clutch if you have the nays, as I was explaining, because when he comes out with 4 or more markers, he forces your opponent to discard a card. So literally, your turn 1, if you are going second, you play the nays, uptick, swing, as Taxon said, and then use the leader skill to play this card. He'll come out with 4 markers. He'll make your opponent discard a card. Uptick him. His uptick will make him 20k for the turn, because he gains plus 10k. And then he will have 5 or more markers. He'll have 5 markers, so he'll be able to swing. And I mean, that's 3 swings, a discard.
5 markers going into your opponent's second turn is a lot to deal with if they want to try to clear that thing.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a lot. Especially like you said, you got dormant. Definitely keep those markers up. Keeping the markers high is really only important in your early turns, because after that it's kind of just, they roll into each other so easily.
They do.
So absolutely.
And then if
that's
you're
a great 3 attacks in your turn 2. If you go second, turn 1, that's very powerful.
And you will draw 1 card due to your leader skill, and then your opponent discards 1 card. So it's just plussing all the way through.
Absolutely.
So
and of course, getting your opponent to discard cards on their defensive turn 1 is crazy. Just my first turn, I'm going to start making you discard cards. Okay.
So to fit along with the hand control variant, I might up this card to 1 more. I'm not entirely sure. It's just a little bit of attack. He has the power green, and then if he comes in with 3 or more markers, your opponent discards a card. His +1 skill is absolutely meaningless to the deck. He plays a field card that you don't run. This card is for the green Beerus deck from last set. But again, he just fits the whole hand control variant. If you don't see your Frieza Unison for some reason in your opening hand, he's the secondary option. He'll do the exact same thing.
Absolutely. He's in power 3 as well, which is important to know. He goes up to like 4 or 5 markers a turn you play him, just like Frieza.
Yep. So if you don't see him while you're losing out as an attack, and you're still making your opponent discard, and you're still getting your draw from your leader, so all of that is...
Absolutely. So you're basically counting him as your 2 extra copies of Frieza. It's like you're running 6 Friezas almost.
Yep.
So, I see exactly what you're doing here. Very smart.
Probably gonna up it to 3 though, just because if I can see that combo almost every time, turn 1, that's brutal.
And then any turn after that, if you have both of those cards in hand, being able to play both of those in 1 turn, 1 for free and 1 for 1 energy, is absolutely crazy.
Absolutely. So next we go into the Unison. Probably the best green Unison outside of the big Frieza in the game. He's very important because if you start your turn 1 and you don't have anything else to play, you can't get your chain going, this is what you do. If you see nothing else, this is what you search for. I'm sure by now pretty much everyone knows what it does. If this card would lose markers, then you take life instead, which is huge. Keeps your Unison alive, keeps your counterplay active, keeps your dormant live.
That's really important.
Very important.
And of course, the Self-Awakening is very nice. If this card if you pull this card out turn 1, a lot of the times your opponent's going to try to swing into this, and it just lets you take life to where you can get to your 4 life and awaken faster. Like a lot of the times when I personally play this deck and I play this out turn 1, if I go first, I can almost pay 1 for one of the 1-drop cooler searchers, and then from there, all I do is replace a unison, rip my last 2 lives, and then I can awaken on my turn 2. That's like one of my favorite plays in this deck. But anyways, go ahead. Denigro does a lot for this deck.
It really does. It really does. Like I said, though, it's a huge saving grace if your early game is crap. Because unfortunately, if you don't see a specific set of combos or unisons, this deck does kind of fall on itself. If your early game is not consistent, yeah, it can be a problem. So this kind of helps remove that inconsistency if it ever comes down to it. If you see it late game, it's just another unison to either pitch.
As well.
Yep. Or it's another unison to pitch for the skill, the backside skill for the +5, or its energy. So.
And of course, it does have a very good -3 skill. So if you ever need a quick barrier removal, you can pay that out for 3 and just -3.
Yeah, that is there. That is there.
If you need it.
Yeah.
That's like the only barrier removal that Cooler generically just has in the deck.
Yep, hasn't come up a lot lately, but I'm sure it'll come up in the
I
future.
personally have never used it, but I've noticed that it's an option.
It is an option indeed. So, shocker, shocker, the king of green unisons at this point. This card is absolutely insane. I probably win more games with this card than I do any other card in this deck. When you play it in power green 4, so it comes in with a whole crap ton of markers. If you're running your Empower chain right, you should be able to get this card anywhere between 6 to 7 markers very consistently. Dual attack, blocker, so much, literally so much. He has a counter attack skill, which I don't use very often, but it's there if it ever comes up. Playing with 3 markers, and he will negate the attack. Or no, he does not negate the attack. But if the opponent's battle card is attacking and it does not have barrier, and you've got enough to make sure he gets 3 markers out, well, it's going to die anyway, so it barely even matters.
Absolutely. It's so strong.
-4. Oh, he has a board wipe as well if he comes out with 3 or more markers, so that's very, very, very huge. We were just talking about that. -4 skill is where he really comes in clutch. As I said, you should really have no problem playing him out with 6, 7 markers. So the turn you play him, you should be able to pull the skill off very easily. In a matchup last week, I won my turn 3 just because my opponent didn't have the defense to hold him off. Felt kind of bad about that, but that's just how broken this unison is. Activate main, -4, he gains +10k and triple strike, and since he's a dual attack inherently, that is 2 30k triple strikes coming at your opponent's leader, which is insane. And at the end of the turn, he'll withstand himself, so you'll be able to get your blocker, so that's just nutty. And then, of course, your leader skill, where you can pitch cards, pitch unisons to give either himself or a unison +5k combo power. It just...
Absolutely. Of course, make the boss monster for the deck a unison in order so that you can just dump your entire hand on one of those things. That makes sense.
Yep.
Very strong.
Yeah, it's positively crazy. We need more unison interaction just because of cards like this. This is crazy.
Yeah, the Gohan, the 3-drop unisons from the last set Ultimate Squad are all very powerful. The baby 3-drop unison, very, very strong.
Yep.
The Golden Frieza, very outrageously. So this card alone revives almost every green deck if you want to.
It really does. Pretty much if you're playing a green deck.
All those 3-cost unisons from Ultimate Squad are busted.
Very, very much busted. Like I said, I win more of my games with this card than I do any other card in this deck. Even if my hand control doesn't work, I'm going in. My last matchup, which I'll talk about in a minute, he had a bigger hand than me the entire time we were playing, and I still won because of him. It's insane. A little bit of a tech for myself, mainly for your Topos or your the Gamma has the Android 15, I do believe, negate, or 14, whichever one that is. Decent card to have, stops your floodgates. You're going down to 4 life very, very easily in this deck, so it's live pretty early in the game, so it's just good to have, especially if you're going for your major kill turn and your opponent's feeling safe, and they're just like, oh, Boopo, and you're just like, no.
Yeah,
No, you're taking it. Or you're dropping your entire hand to save yourself, one of the two. So that's why it's only a 2 of. I usually only need to see 1.
Yeah, absolutely. You just save the 1 for your kill turn, and then it basically gets it for you.
Yep. And then probably going to up to a 2 of. I like running 1 or 2 of the free technically negates just because it changes really, really well with Dormant. Because if you're tapping out quite a bit in this deck, unfortunately, you're really not going to have a whole lot of open energy on your by the end of your turn if you do everything you want to do unless your turn is stopped. So I'm probably going to up this back up to 2. That way I've got 2 homicidal and 2 of this, because if you dormant, they only got 1 more attack for the turn, and then you either this or dormant, then, well, they're done with attacking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it completely shuts their turn down.
And then, of course, always just having hard negate is just very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's probably going to get bumped up to a 2 of. And that should be all I need if I run the deck properly.
And additionally, on top of being a free hard negate, it KOs a 2-cost or less, which is actually super relevant in this meta because a lot of decks run 2-cost or 1-cost cards that are really good.
It's true. A little bit of tech spice. The literally only reason why I won my second matchup against Toa was because they had the 4-cost Boo out, which is effectively like a deadly defender. They can't attack their leader without discarding 2 cards, so that is huge. Primary reason why it's 1-of, it's a card that I really don't want to play a whole lot just because it is a big card to play. It costs 4 energy, and usually I want to be shuffling through my unisons a lot more often just because that's what the deck does, is you're utilizing all of your unisons and all the different skills for utility purposes. So this is in here in case I get a board that with barrier that I just can't deal with.
I was going to say, that's like the best part about this card. This card costs 1 more energy than your Golden Frieza, right?
Yep.
It's going to board wipe ignoring barrier, unlike Golden Frieza, provide you a 25k double strike crit, and then you have a 5 marker unison that you can just swing with your unison leader afterwards and get a whole new power chain started up, like the Galactic Emperor or something, make them discard 1 after that.
Yep.
Like you said, it's basically just for that ignoring barrier board wipe. It's very powerful.
There is a slim chance I might up this to 2, but I don't know. I haven't quite decided yet. There isn't a whole lot of barrier meta right now that I'm worried about, but I guess we'll see how the sets shift. But for the time being, at least having the 1, only reason why I won my game 2.
It's a very strong card.
And then this one is just for the shiggles. It's not the best secret rare to run this deck. You can make the argument that the Kibito Kai or the what was that one? The Baby Janemba, I think, or no, the
Janembu.
Yeah, Janembu, the counter. But I like this card. It is a card that a lot of people don't see coming just because there are technically better cards out there for it.
I've seen that card snag you many W's.
It really has.
People dumping their entire hand into a non-barrier battle card attack, and then not only are they forced to discard probably the last 2 cards they couldn't combo out of hand, but that card that they just swing with dies as well. Yeah, I've seen you taking out quite a few players here at the locals with that type of strategy in this card. It's very strong.
My very first matchup against U7 with this exact variant, they got me down to 2 life. They swung with the 17, and that's exactly what they did. They dumped, just went ham, and I asked the player, does that card have barrier? And he's just like, oh, no, it's good. And I'm like, oh, okay. GG. He was not very happy when that happened, but it's a fun card. So basically,
and it's gorgeous.
It really is. It is a pretty card.
I'm a big Cooler and Frieza clan. I mean, I like Cooler more than Frieza, but I just like the design of these characters.
Yeah, the card is very pretty.
Yeah, very gorgeous.
So actually explain what it does. Activate battle for every Frieza clan or unison, green specified.
And your opponent has to be at 3 or more energy.
And your opponent has to be at 3 or more energy, which is kind of important. Basically, you get to KO a battle card on your opponent's board. Energy cost less than all of your Frieza clan cards, your green unisons, and your energy drop area and leader area, obviously. So, I mean, this card's going to be pretty well alive. This card can hit pretty much anything late game.
With especially in this deck, being that your entire deck is either Frieza clan cards with like all your battle cards, like the 1-drop Cooler, the 5-cost counterplay, like all your battle cards are basically all Frieza clans, and then all your unisons, of course.
Yeah, so
very strong.
Yep. So mid to late game, this can hit pretty much anything, not ignoring barrier, which is the only downside. But still, then it makes your opponent discard 2 cards, which is why I love the most.
Very strong.
Because you're hitting one of your opponent's cards. I like using it offensively too. Even if they don't have anything on board, and I'm just trying to clear their hand, they only have a few cards left in hand, and I'm going for game. This is really clutch.
Just like you were saying, this is more of a hand destruction variant that you were going for. And of course, being that all of your other options in your deck are 1 energy investments in order to make your opponent discard, this kind of just goes along with that theme. You don't even have to be KOing a card, really. You could just be in any battles and just you want your opponent to discard 2? Okay, pay 1.
Yep.
So that's a very strong card.
Very much so.
Do you have any, do you want to talk about your matchups real quick?
Yes, so my first matchup was Red Frieza, not the prison one, but the swap version. His deck profile was done pretty recently. Unfortunately, he just didn't get his engine going, and I was just hand controlling him, so I mean, there's not much I'll say there. That deck actually be very troublesome for me because he does replenish his hand very, very quickly. So if his engine does get going, I can't rely on my hand control varying as much. I have to go for a little more pressure. That's another nice thing about this deck is even though I've got it geared more toward hand control, I can kind of swap it over a little bit into more, not aggro per se, but like mid-range pressure just because...
Like a 15 kp down, deck.
Yeah, it can definitely do it if need be. So, I mean, that's something nice to know. So that's how that matchup went. Match 2 was Toa. Again, I only won that matchup because he played the boot. He was it was the ultimate deck version. He ran it pretty standard with all the ultimate deck cards, a couple techs here and there. So that deck is very defensive. So it actually held me off pretty good. Had I not seen this early game and I did not play it, he would have beat me. Just because he was getting all of his blockers out. He played the 9-drop Slug, which if it's removed by his skill, it makes you discard a card. It lets them destroy. It lets them KO a card on your field, and minus one of your unisons, 2 markers. So that actually hurts.
Yeah. Against your deck, any markers removed from your unisons can be pretty detrimental.
Yes, it can, because this deck is all about...
If you can't keep an Empower chain up and carrying 3 or 4 markers every single time you move a unison, yeah, it definitely puts a halt to the deck.
Yep, so he definitely gave me a run for my money. I sincerely thought I was going to lose that game because of that card, but this won me a game. It was the only reason why I won the game. Had he not, he went through 2 of his Sparking Negates. I know for a fact he runs 4. Had he had his last Sparking Negate, because he was down to 2 life, he would have beat me, like hands down. That game was streamed, actually, so you get to see that. You get to see me panicking, like I'm actually going to lose this, holy crap. And then my last game was Go Tanks, Green Go Tanks. Ran by Taxon here. As I said earlier, I was trying to hand control him. I was not succeeding. He was keeping his hand up sturdy every single time, as Go Tanks does. So that was a pretty clutch matchup. Only reason I won was because I had my negates. I hand controlled them, I think, just enough. And then I went in for Frieza, and the Frieza counter, the Frieza Unison, of course, won me the game, as always.
Alrighty, so with that being said, do you have any final shout-outs?
Well, shout out to Yuhp Games as usual. Love coming here, playing every single week. Love getting streams, love looking at all my mistakes later. And then looking at my profile and thinking, oh, wow, I could have said that better. But, you know, live and learn. And then shout out to Jesters as always.
Absolutely.
Come up here
the
every
locals,
week.
absolutely.
And yeah, that's pretty well it.
Alrighty, well with that being said guys, that was the Undefeated Cooler list. If you guys enjoyed this deck profile or any of my content in general, remember to hit all those buttons for me, like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.